Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope everyone's fine and that you've been following our videos. I hope that things are clear and that you are having a grasp of writing. So without any further ado, let's go ahead with today's video. The topic is editing and revising. So let's see, what do we have in today's video for you. A quick recap of what have we covered so far. We started off with writing as a process, where Sir Farhan spoke to you in detail on how writing is a process and how it's a skill that could be learned. Then I spoke about pre-writing techniques, where we discussed different pre-writing techniques to gather ideas on certain topics. And then once we have all those ideas, we sort of put them together in an effective outline. So we organize all the ideas, where we make outlines so that it's we have a roadmap for our first draft. Okay, and then we went ahead in our last video, we spoke about writing the first draft. We spoke about how does a paragraph look like. Okay, and what's the agenda for today? In this video, we are going to cover two topics. First is characteristics of a well organized paragraph, or we can also say characteristics of a well organized essay. But since we are not covering essay writing here, we are only talking about paragraphs. So we'll be looking at this topic in the perspective of paragraph writing only. Okay, so first I'll talk about characteristics of a well organized paragraph, and then I'll move ahead on the topic editing and revising our paragraphs. Okay, let's see, what do we have. So characteristics of a well organized paragraph. Dear students, in your book we have three characteristics that have been told to us. Three characteristics of a well organized paragraph. What are those three characteristics? The first one is unity, second is cohesion, and third is coherence. Okay, so let's see, what is unity, what is cohesion, and what is coherence. Starting with unity. As the name suggests, unity means working with one idea only. Okay, when we talk about a well organized paragraph, when we talk about an effective paragraph, we must know that this paragraph is written on one idea only. Okay, in my last video I did speak about this topic in detail, where I told you that some students might ask us that well, if we have only one idea, why do we have so many supporting details? Why do we have all these three major details and three minor details? And I told you very clearly that those three major and minor details are actually supporting that particular one idea only, right? So reiterating the same, we must only have one idea in our paragraph. Okay, the given details in the paragraph, they should be relevant. Okay, we must ensure that the details that we have provided are relevant to that one idea and that they support our topic sentence. Okay, and any irrelevant detail is omitted, or irrelevant details are not included. So whenever you want to look for unity in your paragraph, you must ensure that it's based on one idea only, and that all the details are relevant and they support the topic sentence, and any other irrelevant details are not included in that paragraph. I remember a comment from one of the videos where a student was asking me, if we are writing on a paragraph, should we only write about positive things and not write about negative things? So for example, he said that we have one topic, shall I only write about positive aspects of that and not include negative details, or can I also include the negative details? So the answer to that is, when you are writing a paragraph, you should only focus on one side of the story. Okay, so you should only have one idea. If you're writing on positives, only write about positives. Okay, if you want to write about negatives, you can go ahead and write another paragraph. Okay, unless you have an argumentative essay where you can give both perspectives. But since we are not talking about essays right now, we are only talking about paragraphs, I would again reiterate that your paragraphs should have one idea only. Okay, and that's what is called unity in a paragraph. Moving ahead, the second characteristic is cohesion. When we talk about cohesion, we mean that the sentences in a paragraph are connected firmly. Okay, all the sentences that you have written, your topic sentence, moving on with your supporting details, and the body of the paragraph, and then the concluding sentence, all of them are interconnected. That's what cohesion means. And how do you achieve cohesion? How can we ensure that we have cohesion in our paragraph? We can do it in two ways. There are two ways to achieve cohesion in a paragraph. The first one is repetition of key nouns or key terms, we can also say. Okay, and the second one is consistent pronouns. Let's talk about these two in a little detail. What do we mean when we say repetition of key nouns? So repeating key nouns in your paragraph is the easiest way to achieve cohesion. Okay, this is used to keep the focus on the main idea. If you keep on repeating the key term or key noun in your paragraph, this makes sure that your focus of the paragraph is on that one idea only, and that you are not straying from your topic. You are on your topic. You sort of keep the focus on this one idea that you're writing about. However, if you repeat the key noun, if you repeat it too much, then it may cause monotony and it may not look very nice. So what we do is, in order to avoid that, we use pronouns instead wherever they are appropriate. Okay, so wherever it's appropriate, we may use pronouns instead of our key nouns. But just to make sure that we stay on the same topic and that we keep everything connected together, we sort of keep on repeating those nouns. Okay, so when we talk about using pronouns instead of nouns, now we must ensure that the pronouns that we are using are consistent. This brings me back to your first week's video on consistency in pronouns and verbs. Remember, you must have seen that video. If not, you shall go back to the first week and you should watch that video again, where Sir Farhan has spoken about consistency in pronouns and verbs in detail. So here I'm going to just quickly give you a review of that. When using pronouns instead of key nouns, make sure to use the same person and number throughout the paragraph. Okay, which means you should not be changing from you to he or you to she or from he to they. Okay, you should make sure that the pronouns that you're using are consistent with the nouns that you have already used. All right, so again, if you have not watched the video of consistency in pronouns and verbs, please go back to the playlist and you shall find a video on consistency. Okay, that's where you can learn in detail about this topic. But sort of wrapping this cohesion topic up, you must ensure that you're repeating the nouns, or you're using pronouns instead of them, and if you're using pronouns, the pronouns are consistent. All right, moving ahead to our third characteristic. So the third characteristic, as defined in your book, is coherence. Now, I have talked about coherence in my last video as well, but let's just give a quick revision of this. Coherence means the shift or the movement from one sentence to the other must be logical and smooth. Okay, it should not be abrupt, it should not be illogical. How do you do that? You do that by using transitional words and phrases. So in my last video, I did give you a hint about different transition words and phrases, and we did practice them as well. I'm sure that the first drafts that you have written, you have included those transition words and phrases, and that your paragraphs are coherent. Okay, but we must ensure that whenever we are writing our drafts, we are using proper transitional words and phrases so that the reader is able to smoothly and logically move from one point to another as the writer has written it. Okay, so these were the three characteristics of effective paragraphs. Now we are going to move on to the second part of the second part of the video, which is editing and revising. So dear students, Once you have your first drafts ready, what shall we do? Shall we just submit it with our teachers like that? Or shall we just give it up for publication? Or shall we just show it to somebody else and say, hey, see, I've written a wonderful paragraph? Well, before doing any of that, you must revise it carefully because, as the name suggests, this is your first draft. It is not your final draft. Okay? That's the key of writing, that's the core of effective writing. That's the whole essence, that you should never give your write-ups to somebody else before revising it. Well, if you want to do a peer review, that's another thing. You may show it to your friend for revision, but I'm talking in a sense where you have to sort of submit an assignment, or you have to submit, or you're writing your paragraphs in examination. What do? Is you write your first draft, but then you carefully revise it so that you can improve upon the quality and the relevance of that paragraph. Okay, once you have gone through the entire process of writing, you have done your pre-writing, you have gathered your ideas, you have generated ideas, then you have organized them in outlines, and now you have written your first draft based on that outline. So apparently it should look like you have worked so hard on this paragraph and that it's all ready, it's done, it's wonderful, it's looking amazing. But there is always a room for improvement. So what do? Is we revise it and we edit it. That shall be the last step in your writing process. You should never consider revising and editing as an additional burden on you. Rather, you should be confident about it and you should include it as the part of the process. All right, so once you have your first draft, which I'm sure by now you all have, if you have been following our videos and if you have been doing the exercises that I have asked you to do from the book and otherwise, then right now you must at least have one first draft ready. Okay, so now what is the time? Now is the time to carefully revise it so that we can make changes to it to improve the quality and relevance of that paragraph. Now, what are the 4 bases of revision? So these 4 bases are described by John Langdon in detail, and I'm sure that when you all, inshallah, join us in our regular semesters, we will be talking in detail about all these 4 bases of revision and working so hard on them. But as all of them are not per se described in your book or not have been included in your book like this, so I'm sort of giving you a quick hint of this, and then we'll move on to the general description of editing. All right, so well, what are those 4 bases that you must know? Unity, support, coherence, and language skills. Okay, now the whole idea of including the characteristics of a well-organized paragraph in this video, at the start of this video, was so that I may bring you to this point where you know what unity is, where you know what coherence is, where you know what cohesion is, and how it helps you write effective paragraphs. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 bases of revision. What are those 4 things that you should be looking for when you are revising or editing your drafts? The first one is unity. Okay, like I said, there should be one idea only. You should be working on one idea. You have to review your paragraph and see if you have included more than one ideas anywhere in the paragraph. Okay, the second is support. Do you have relevant support? Do you have relevant supporting details? And do you have adequate supporting details? Which means that do you have enough major and minor details to support what you have been saying? Okay, about the major and minor details, about the support, if you want to revise this topic, please view my last video. You can watch the last video and there you will understand what support means in a paragraph. So when you're revising, you should be again revising the supports that you have added in your paragraph. The third is coherence. like I just now told you, coherence is logical flow of ideas. So from one sentence to another, from one major detail to another major detail, you you shall be smoothly transitioning from one point to another point. All right. So we'll be looking at that in our revision. And lastly, the language skills. Okay. If you have amazing ideas, if you have organized them well, if you have supported them well, but there are language errors, there are grammatical errors, or there are punctuation or spelling errors, then definitely it's not going to leave a great impact on the reader. So you must ensure that the language skills are also revised and that your sentence structures and your grammar and punctuation are also reviewed and edited. Okay, so as per your book, now let me just generally tell you what editing means. Now, editing means checking that your writing makes sense. Okay, whatever you're saying, is it making any sense? Okay, that's the first thing you should be looking for. Am I understandable? Okay, is this writing understandable to others? Is it making any sense? Right. The second thing is, does it addresses the topic. So whatever your topic is, if you have to write about friendship, you are not writing about library, right? So your writing shall be addressing the topic that has been given to you, okay, or that you have chosen to write on. Next is you have to check if your writing is organized well, right? So here we talk about the organization of your points. Then you should also be looking at if your writing is grammatically correct or not. So which also means that your tenses and that your subject verb agreement and all those things, right? You also have to see if it has correct spellings, it has correct vocabulary and punctuation. So this comes in the language skills, the one that I was just talking about. And that you have to make sure that it does not use any cliches. Cliches are commonly overused phrases, right? So it should not use those cliches. Then moving on, you have to make sure that it meets other requirements of the paragraph, such as the word length. So for example, in examination we usually give you a word length, or in assignments we ask our students to write paragraphs of any word length. Like we may ask you to write a paragraph of 150 words on a certain topic, so you have to ensure that you are meeting that requirement as well. That's what editing means. Okay, so from these topics or from this list, you must understand that we are covering all four bases of revision that I just mentioned in the previous slide. Okay, there's one important point here. It says you have to ensure that you have to make sure, or you have to check that your writing conveys the ideas concisely and effectively. Concisely and effectively. Now, what do we mean by concisely and effectively? There's a little detail about that in your book, which I'm just going to share with you here. When we mean writing conveys ideas concisely and effectively, we mean that it should not use unnecessary or more words than are needed to express it. So concise means it's not wordy. It does not have unnecessary words. For example, a sentence like my pencils, rubber, pens and ruler and all my stationery fell in the water. Instead of that, if you revise it, a better version of this sentence could be my stationery fell into the water. Why? Because pencils, rubbers, pen and ruler, all of that is included in stationery, right? So you do not need to write all these words. We have to make our sentences brief. Instead of we have to make them very concise. So secondly, when we say that writing conveys ideas concisely and effectively, we also mean that we do not use needlessly difficult language. For example, the burning that destroys buildings, trees and vehicles can often be extinguished by throwing water. the burning that destroys buildings, trees, and vehicles can often be extinguished by throwing water. Instead of that, a revised sentence could be fire in buildings, trees, and vehicles can be put out by water. So you do not need to use needlessly difficult words like extinguished or throwing water or the burning that destroys, right? We can simply say fire in buildings, trees, and vehicles can be put out by water. All right. Um, Also, it should not use the wrong words. What do we mean by the wrong words? The wrong words here, for example, the students were giving their examinations. Well, I'm giving my exam, right? Giving exam is not a correct word. The right word would be the students were taking their exam. Okay, so whenever you're editing, you make sure that your writing conveys the ideas concisely and effectively, which means that it should not be wordy, it should not use difficult language, and it should not use wrong language or wrong words. Okay, here's another example. So for example, you write, the truck was speeding, the truck was brown, the truck skidded on some ice, the truck almost hit a police officer, the police officer was startled, the police officer was young. Instead of saying all that, you could simply say, the brown speeding truck startled the young police officer as it skidded on some ice and almost hit him. Alright, so look at that sentence. It has all these details, but it is more effective and it conveys the idea concisely and effectively. So we have avoided wordiness, we have avoided different, all these big sentences, and we have put all the things together into one sentence, which is giving the sense pretty well. Okay, so dear students, that's almost it for today's video. I have some exercises from the book for you that I would like you to go ahead and do them in your notebooks or in Microsoft Word if you would like to, and you may share them in the comment section. So those exercises are based on the topics that I have covered today. Some exercises include exercises 1 on page 75, exercise 2 and 3 on page 76, exercise 1 on page 89, and exercise 2 on page 90. Okay, all these exercises are from the topics that we have covered, which were characteristics of a well-organized paragraph and editing and revising. So apart from that, you may revise and edit your first drafts, whatever you have written so far. You may also revise and edit the paragraph from our last video. Remember the one on Canada? Let me give you a quick hint. There are certain sentences that could be edited, they could be revised, and we can write even better version of that paragraph. Okay, so go ahead, revise your drafts, revise the paragraph from our last video, edit them and then revise for all these 4 bases that I just spoke about today. Make sure that they are well organized, make sure that they are unified, that there is enough support, relevant and adequate support, make sure that there is coherence in them, make sure that they look very nice and that they are error free. Okay, once you do that, you may share those write-ups with us and I'll be very happy to look at them. With this, I would like to say goodbye to you. Keep writing, keep enjoying, keep watching the videos, and keep learning. Thank you, and Allah Hafiz.